And when you start to speak and ask the questions, people come in with questions. I've had people with 30 questions at a time. So there are a lot of questions, physical, emotional, spiritual, whatever they deem they would like to find out about. When you go at that level and you start to speak to it, you start to see that these things don't matter. And yes, I understand that, people do have worries. They do have things that are going on in their lives. When they have this experience, they realize that actually I was told, the subconscious mind said, my higher self informed me that I need to work on this area. I need to work on this, and everything else will come. The experience within itself brings change in the perspective because it's something that people have not experienced before. And it's a part of them. It is a part of them that they haven't experienced before. And what we're doing is, we're bringing in all the layers of what it is to be human. So I believe that we have different layers, the emotional, the physical, the psychological, the mental, and the spiritual. And when we start to integrate these layers, instead of just being in one of those layers, either the physical or the mental, you're starting to integrate on a very, very slowly at the pace the person needs it. And this happens basically the way the person needs it and is appropriate for that time. When you start to bring these things in together, things begin to change because you experience different things. You start to see things differently, and you start to understand yourself from a different perspective and start to see that, it might have been important at that time because that was your perspective. But when you start to enlarge it, then you start to see how things can be different and how you can change things. And actually, you're doing it yourself, which is the most incredible thing and the most empowering thing.
It's sort of like when you're caught up in it, you don't know what you don't know.
That's right.
And you go to a different place.
So as you're taking the macro, the kind of zooming out, that's what we're doing. We're zooming out and looking at it from a different perspective, getting information from your higher self that is, the information that has come out has been astounding for me as a practitioner. I've learned a lot. But for the clients, it's incredible. Because a lot of the things that they intuitively thought, I kind of know this, but they doubted themselves, they were spot on. So, it's almost like coming into our own as humanity. I think that's how I would describe it.
What's the most effective approach, if there is one, to going into a session? In other words, it sounds like the kind of thing where people can, write down their questions for their higher self who is aware that we're living in a quantum field. And these are my questions. And go into a session that way, or maybe the more traditional way, which was go into a session with a complaint and say, this is the problem that I want solved. And both are probably valid, right?
They are valid. And, I think it depends on what the client, what their approach is. And I'm flexible. I say to the person, if when you come in, bring some questions with you. And inevitably, a lot of people forget or they don't know what to ask. So I said, that's okay, because we can formulate them at the interview stage. And in fact, through discussion, through listening, through trying to understand what the complaint, as you say, that they've come in with, we see different facets of it. And when you begin to have different facets of things, you have new questions that perhaps you didn't have before. So I tend to be very open, and I tend to like the one where we work together on the questions. And before they go into any part of the hypnosis session, we read them and we write them together. And so we know that what we're asking is what the client wants.
Right, and for maybe get the highest leverage questions.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Do you have an example of this, of somebody who had questions who got answers, or somebody who had a problem who found kind of an unexpected solution?
Well, this happens all the time. I do have an example. I had a client who came in, And she said that she was coming in to try and find out what her direction was, and that she had lost her direction. And, you know, we didn't go into a past life. And this is the interesting part, is that if the higher self deems that the information required by that person, is basically from the present life, showing them something that happened or showing them an experience, it will do that. And we always ask what the purpose of showing whatever it is that they were showing. And this is what happened to this lady, and she was surprised at the end. She said, "I'm surprised. I didn't go into a past life." And I said, "This is what was important for you at this time." And the subconscious mind, we had asked the question, and it had said, or the higher self had said very directly. It's a very direct communication. It doesn't mince words. It's very truthful. It says things the way they are. And she turned around to me at the end and she said, "I didn't realize I hadn't dealt with that. I thought I had dealt with that." And I said to her, "But on a very deep level, perhaps this wasn't dealt with in the way that you should have done." And the subconscious mind was fantastic and this comes down to the practitioner asking the right questions, because all these sessions are recorded and I send it to the clients. They can listen to it, and you always find out something new because there's so much information. But, it was really asking the right questions, and the subconscious mind actually explained how to go about dealing with the situation that she needed to deal with and to move on. And really gave, that she had to believe in herself, have faith and trust herself. And this is how she had to do it. And it's wonderful work, and for both the client and the practitioner, in my view.
I find it, just on a side note, no matter what kind of therapy or coaching that we do with people, I find it interesting that time doesn't necessarily heal wounds. In other words, and people are consistently surprised, even in disbelief, that something that happened 40 years ago, 50 years ago, can still be affecting them significantly today, because consciously they've told themselves over and over again that it shouldn't be a problem and I shouldn't be feeling this, and they're repressing it. And it's really mind-boggling to think that we carry this stuff with us over such a period of time. But until it's dealt with, it's not dealt with. Isn't that true in your experience?
That's right. I mean, dealing with something you think consciously doesn't mean that, on a deeper level, it has been dealt with. And interestingly, what I've found in my practice is that, it doesn't just affect our emotional bodies. It affects us physically. A lot of the time in the sessions, the subconscious mind or the higher self, whichever works best for the listeners, it really says that, once this person has resolved this emotional complaint or issue, that their physical symptoms will go, or they'll be ameliorated, or it'll take some time for it to be healed. We also do ask for healing in the session, and you can do a body scan and it'll say, "I'm healing this, I'm healing that." And some of the healing stories that I have experienced myself, and my clients and other people, other practitioners that I've spoken to who use this technique, is phenomenal. I mean, even Dolores herself, Dolores Cannon has a lot of books, and you write, you can read them, and she has a lot of understanding of, and she's written about what healings have taken place, and it is phenomenal because our emotions cannot be divorced from our physical. And if we look at that from a quantum perspective, it makes sense because, on the energetic level, our emotions do really affect our different organs. And in Chinese medicine, that is something they take into account. And it's interesting how not letting something go can really eat away, not just at the body, at the mind, but at the emotions too. And taking people, this is interesting, Mike, you'll love this because I love it so much. I took a lady into past life regression with Dolores' technique. And in the interview, she had said when she was small, she had had this throbbing headache right in the middle of her forehead. And she realized later on it was her third eye. And the past life that she had, I asked the question. I said, during the death experience, what happened? You're an observer. You're not going to be affected in any way. And she said that they crushed her skull. Immediately I asked, where did you crush? Where was the skull crushed? It was right in her third eye. And sometimes we do bring things in from the past lives that affect us physically here in this life. And with this particular technique, we can send it back where it came from, and because it's not needed here. And so we can heal on that level too. And that's mind-blowing for me, and it's just wonderful.
And and she lost her symptom.
She lost her symptom, and also she understood why. Why was it there? There's so many facets to us that we still haven't explored, and it's just so interesting that we can explore this and move forward.
I have more questions for you, but first, do you work with people at a walk-in office in San Diego? Do you also work with people online or over Skype?
I like Skype, but I like to also be with the person, especially when you're doing the quantum healing hypnosis. I want to be there. I will not do it on Skype. I would feel that it would be unethical. I need to be there, present with the person. My energy, my field, when we're talking about quantum, will affect the client. And I have to prepare myself before I have each session and make sure that I'm in a space where I'm receiving information for the client, asking the right questions, by using the information that I receive, because I'm very intuitive in my sessions. I think that would be lost with the Skype session, so I don't do that. No.
Okay. Now you talk about and I'm not sure I caught this right, but you talked about doing a scan.
Right.
People. Tell me about that a little bit more.
Okay, so with the higher self, the subconscious mind is very, very powerful. It can do anything and everything. It has so many facets to it that we still have not, we've only dipped our little toe in the water, so to speak. And with Dolores' technique, basically, if the person wants a physical healing, which is part of the technique itself, what we do is when we're down deep enough and we're talking to the subconscious mind, if it's appropriate, and the higher self will say to you, at this time, this is not necessary, and it'll give you a reason. But if the person wants it, we'll do a physical scan of the body. And I'll ask the question, so what are you scanning? What are you finding? It will tell me. So from personal experience, I'll give you, this is very interesting. I wanted to find out about healing of my eyes. And during my session, I can tell you that it felt like I had gravel in my eyes. And, the higher self was saying we're healing her eyes. It'll take some time, a few months for her to improve her vision. And the eyes were watering. And as I said, I had gravel in my eyes, and I didn't realize until later when I was sharing this experience with someone, and they said to me, Chiara, I've had laser treatment for my eyes, and that's exactly what it feels like. Gravel in the eyes and your eyes water. Well, I nearly fell off my chair. I was like, wow, okay. So, this is the type of healing that takes place. And, if people are interested, this is to experience this. It's wonderful. And also to read about it in Dolores Cannon's books. She talks about a lot of things that she's seen and experienced with a lot of her clients. So yeah, that the physical scan is the most interesting, I find, because I'm interested in health and health research. So
sure. Now that sounds to a skeptic, that's going to sound way far out. That through quantum hypnosis, the higher self can physically heal the body and even perform laser surgery on your eyes.
Right.
That's going to sound way out there. And yet, what's interesting is also, and I don't know where I'm going with this, but of the different alternative health practitioners, new age practitioners, and so forth that I've talked to and interviewed, sometimes the skeptics are the best clients because they come in after they've tried everything else and they're desperate for healing. they'll try anything, and that the pain that they're in makes them open-minded, and there's a lot of spontaneous healing that actually occurs in that realm, as opposed to somebody who's been meditating for 25 years and familiar with all the hypnosis and whatever else, and they're just looking for a different angle on it.
Well, I'd like to bring up something that you said just earlier on. You said that their pain has opened up their mind to do something else. And, a lot of the time, illness does that.